Whilst Cao Cao was campaigning against Zhang Xiu, Liu Bei left his base at Xiapi to attack the pretender Yuan Shu, so Lu Bu took advantage of his absence and captured the city. The two could not coexist in Shu province, which led to Liu Bei being forced out, which is where his wives were captured. The animosity created within the factions of Shu was one of Cao Cao's ploys, for he much desired the province. He had placed 2 spies in the camp to sow discord between Lu Bu, Liu Bei and Chen Gong. The spies became the left and right advisors to Lu Bu, and convinced him to drive Liu Bei out, who was then forced to seek help from Cao Cao. This had all been against Chen Gong's advice. Shortly after Cao Cao's defeat at Wancheng, Yuan Shao wrote to him in an arrogant manner, so he wanted to attack him. Yuan Shao was currently fighting with Gongsun Zan, so Guo Jia and Shunye convinced their lord to take this opportunity to attack Lu Bu instead. Some warned against moving east though, as Zhang Xiu and Liu Biao might attack again after their recent victory. Shunye believed that they had suffered greatly whilst they pursued Cao Cao, so would not be able to make any further moves. Liu Biao and Zhang Xiu have recently been broken. In their situation, they will not dare act. Lu Bu is brave and fierce and also relies on Yuan Shu. If he operates between the Hua and Xi rivers, fighting men will certainly respond to him. Now, take advantage of his earlier rebellion, whilst his forces are not yet of one heart. Go, and you can break him. To prevent a future alliance between either of the Yuans and Lu Bu, Cao Cao made preparations for a campaign to Xiapi. By 198, Lu Bu had made peace with Yuan Shu, but Cao Cao had appointed Chen Deng as the administrator of Guangling Commandery and secretly implanted him to act as a spy against Lu Bu. There was a formidable selection of people serving at Xiapi, such as the cunning Chen Gong and Gao Shun with his destructive camp crusher unit. Zhang Ba and his bandits also provided support for Lu Bu around the area. Wang Kai and Xu Si were sent to ask for reinforcements from Yuan Shu, so they stayed there in order to persuade him to send aid. He was told he would become isolated if Lu Bu was defeated, so he considered sending relief forces. Xin Yilu was also sent to seek aid from Lu Bu's old friend Zhang Yang, but then he also went to meet with Yuan Shu as well. His wife, Lady Du, and her son Xin Lang stayed at Xiapi throughout the entire siege. Cao Cao found victory in the initial stages as he surrounded the city, where Lu Bu lost 3 engagements. He suffered a serious defeat where the commander of his cavalry was captured, so he retreated to Xiapi. He personally led his cavalry out once more, but was beaten back again, so he built firm trenches behind his city walls. When Cao Cao's army reached Pencheng, Chen Gong urged Lu Bu to attack right away. We should attack the enemy now, since our troops have rested well, whilst the enemy is weary. He instead chose to stay behind the city walls and replied, "Why don't we wait for them to attack first? After that, we'll destroy them on the Xi River." After 1 month, Pencheng fell, and Cao Cao's attacks increased in intensity. Lu Bu went up the White Gate Tower, the viewing platform above the main gate in the south of Xiapi, and told his men, "Cao Cao has no intention of finding trouble with you. I should surrender to the wise lord." Chen Gong called out, "The treacherous Cao Cao is no wise lord. Surrendering to him is like hitting a rock with an egg. How can you expect to live after you surrender?" Yue Jin was put in charge of a separate command and defeated one of Lu Bu's deputies outside the city before joining the encirclement of Xiapi. At the same time, Chen Deng openly defected to Cao Cao's side and led his men from Guangling to also join in the siege. As Yuan Shu did not send reinforcements immediately, Lu Bu became worried that he would refuse in the end because of the failed marriage proposal between them from earlier. He decided help would not be coming, so he escorted his daughter out of Xiapi and attempted to send her to Yuan Shu's territory. He encountered the enemy troops outside who fired arrows at him, but he was unable to break through their siege, so he had to turn back. It's possible that Lu Bu's attempt to sneak his daughter out of the city happened concurrently with his third skirmish against Cao Cao. He charged some 1,000 riders out of the gates to engage the enemy for a third time, but they were defeated yet again and forced to retreat. When he returned to the city, he defended it firmly without advancing. Yuan Shu did in fact help, but only sent about 1,000 cavalry to reinforce, and they were defeated before they got to the city. Lu Bu ordered Chen Gong and Gao Shun to defend, whilst he led his horsemen to attack the enemy supply routes. Before he departed, his wife Yan Shi told him, "General, I know you want to attack their supply lines, but those two do not get along. If you leave, they may not work well in defending the city. If a mishap occurs, what will become of you? I hope you consider this carefully, and not be misled by Chen Gong and the others. Back in Chang'an, you had already abandoned me. and I only managed to return to you because Pang Shu secretly protected me and kept me with him. You don't need to worry about me anymore." Lu Bu felt gloom after listening to his wife and could not decide on what to do. Meanwhile, in Heinei Commandery, Zhang Yang lacked the resources to march to Xiapi, so he made a show of force against Cao Cao instead. He was assassinated by Yang Chong, who went to surrender to Tao, but he was also quickly killed by Sui Gu, who wanted to join Yuan Shao. By now, Shi Huan had led his unit of men, which included Xu Huang, to attack and defeat Zhao Xu and Li Zhu. Then they received their surrender. Next, they went to Heinei, where with Shi Huan's and Cao Ren's assistance, Xu Huang also defeated and killed Sui Gu. Cao Cao wrote to Lu Bu, explaining the perilous situation he was in. He panicked and wanted to surrender, but Chen Gong reiterated that the enemy had marched a long way and could not last a prolonged battle. He advised the best time to attack would be months later when Tao's forces ran out of supplies. He went on to suggest that Lu Bu should remain inside the city with some of the men, whilst the rest of the army garrisoned outside the walls. This way, the two armies could support each other when the other came under attack. Lu Bu agreed, but wanted to be the one stationed outside. His wife repeated that Chen Gong and Gao Shun did not get along, so there'd be a problem if Lu Bu was not around. She also felt that Cao Cao used to treat Chen Gong better than he was being treated now, so she suspected him of betrayal. "And do you intend to entrust the entire city to him, along with your family, whilst you venture out alone? If something happens, I won't be your wife anymore." Hearing this, Lu Bu changed his mind and aborted Chen Gong's plan altogether. Xiapi had been surrounded for some time now, but it still stood firm as Cao Cao's troops became tired and weary. He wanted to withdraw, as did his troops, but Shun Yu and Guojia knew Lu Bu's army was also tired, but with even lower morale after suffering so many defeats. Guojia criticized Chen Gong as clever but slow. Now that the 3 battles were all failures for Lu Bu, his vigorous energy has decayed. Now, when Lu Bu's energy has not been revived and has not been decided, you can attack violently and Lu Bu will be captured. Tao heeded their advice to quickly press a fierce attack, so commanded his troops to dig trenches to redirect the waters of the Yi and Si rivers to flood Xiapi. It was flooded for over a month, until the defenders became demoralized and alienated from Lu Bu. When they opened the city gates, he decided to surrender, but Chen Gong stopped him because he knew he had deeply offended Cao Cao earlier when he betrayed him. Cao Cao maintained a general law that those who surrendered to him, after rejecting an initial call to join him, would not be spared. Hu Cheng found a trader to purchase 15 horses, but he ran away with them himself and planned to present them to Liu Bei. Hu Cheng pursued the man, however, and retrieved the prized horses which were stolen. The other generals congratulated his achievement with a feast when he returned to the city, so Hu Cheng prepared food and wine. Lu Bu was furious. "I ordered a ban on alcohol, and now you prepare wine? Are you planning to make me drunk and then turn against me?" Hu Cheng grew unhappy and scared, so he plotted with Song Xian and Wei Shu to capture Chen Gong and Gao Shun, then surrendered to Cao Cao with their troops on February the 7th in 199. When Lu Bu heard of Hu Cheng's defection and the loss of his most able officers, he led his remaining men to White Gate Tower, where he made a last stand on the city gates, but was eventually overpowered. When he saw that the enemy was closing in on him, he asked his men to kill him and bring his head to Cao Cao, but they refused. He was then captured and taken alive to go see him. Lu Bu's followers were tied up and brought before Cao Cao and Liu Bei. Lu Bu tried to persuade Cao Cao to spare him, then complained that he was too tightly bound, but was told, "A tiger should be tightly tied up." Cao rubbed his jaw as he pondered. Initially he wanted to spare Lu Bu, but Liu Bei reminded him, "Haven't you seen what happened to Ding Yuan and Dong Zhuo?" Lu Bu glared as Cao Cao nodded at him, so he scolded Big Ears Liu Bei as the most untrustworthy person. He pledged to serve Cao Cao faithfully. "Let me serve under you, and you'd be unopposed in the realm. I treated my subordinates generously, but they betrayed me when I was in trouble." Cao replied, "You abandoned your wife, and you've designs on your men's wives. You call this treating them generously?" Lu Bu remained silent. Wang Bi then spoke up. "Lu Bu is a formidable prisoner of war. His subordinates are nearby. He cannot be spared." Cao Cao then said to Lu Bu, "I wanted to spare you, but my registrar refuses, so what should I do?" Chen Gong was asked what should become of his family members, and he hinted to Cao Cao that they should be spared. So that his old lord's laws could be upheld, he refused to return back to Cao Cao's service, which emotionally moved him. He was overcome with grief as he watched Chen Gong accept his fate and walk to the execution ground without looking back. Lu Bu was put to death by hanging, and then Cao Cao had his, Chen Gong's and Gao Shun's bodies decapitated, and all their heads were sent to Xuchang. They were paraded in the market as a warning before being buried. Chen Gong's family were spared, provided for, and treated well. Zhang Liao, Chen Shun, and many others became appointed as generals and officials. Cao Cao then went on to pacify the eastern part of Shu and Qing provinces along the coast. Eventually, other minor warlords such as Zhang Ba, Sun Guan, Wu Dun, Yin Li, and Shang Shi were all put in charge of the various commanderies along the coastline. By early 199, Guan Yu had become interested in Xin Yilu's previous wife, Lady Du. He constantly asked permission from Cao Cao to claim Duxi for himself. Despite his pleas, Cao Cao secretly met with her himself, which frustrated Guan Yu. He made her his own concubine instead, and then Xinlang became his adopted son. Duxi gave birth to 3 of Cao Cao's children, Cao Lin, Cao Gun, and Princess Xin Xiang. Xin Yilu also eventually surrendered to Cao Cao, where Zhang Fei once scolded him. "Another man took your wife, but you chose to be a magistrate under him. How can you behave so arrogantly as though nothing has happened?" Xin Yilu followed Liu Bei and travelled for several miles, but when he regretted it later and decided to leave, Zhang Fei killed him. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.